Make sure you're subscribed to the channel because whether there's breaking news like there was yesterday with Haywood Highsmith or a rumor coming out here about a Heat trade, we will have you covered. So hit that sub button and let's take a push towards 13K subscribers. I want to do it for Bam Adebayo. Are the Heat interested in a Brandon Ingram trade? That's the topic of today's show. I am Nic Rohloff. This is the Heat Report by Chat Sports. There is a little rumor out there that they could be. Now, is it believable and trustworthy? That's a different story because it did come in from Scoop B. Robinson on Brandon Ingram here. Per a Pelican source, teams that have registered interest in Ingram include the San Antonio Spurs, Miami Heat, Portland Trailblazers. Offers for BI haven't really been up to par in what they want them. Now, he did also mention the Sacramento Kings as a team that has registered interest and probably the team that has shown the most interest, if we're going to be honest. Don't know if that is going to end after the DeMar DeRozan signing, but who knows? But when it comes to the Heat being interested here, I don't know if that is necessarily the truth. And I don't know how much I believe this. Like, Scoop B isn't the most reliable NBA insider. I was talking with some people here, and we probably put him on the same tier as Jake Fisher. So they definitely have some intel around the league, but it's not like if they say something like Woj or Shams, it's the actual truth. So I'm a little bit skeptical about it. And it could also, he did mention it's from a Pelican source, be New Orleans throwing the Heat in those talks to try to drive up the price point for a Spurs team, a Trailblazers team, or a Sacramento Kings. But I will say this. Trading for Brandon Ingram is better than running it back. And after the Heat signed Haywood Highsmith back to the team yesterday, they are now at a full 14 players. And they can't sign anyone else unless they go over the second apron. So that's not going to happen. So the only way to upgrade this team, unless they're taking this exact roster you see now into training camp, is via a trade. And could Brandon Ingram be that piece? Ingram has been one of the better scorers in the NBA ever since he entered the league after being a Duke Blue Devil. He was the top 3 pick for the Los Angeles Lakers and had some solid couple years in Los Angeles before being shipped out to New Orleans, where his career has really taken off. He's a consistent 20-point-per-game scorer, and he is a bit of an efficient guy, right? He shoots 45 or plus % better from the field. The one thing that is a little concerning when you think of Brandon Ingram's fit, specifically with Miami, is his three-point shooting as well as his defense and his motor. But if you remember, I've shown this tweet a couple times, and when you're talking about what the Heat can do to improve this team, I tweeted this out before Donovan Mitchell extended. If the Heat don't make a move for Donovan Mitchell, Lauri Markkanen, Trae Young, or Brandon Ingram, it's time to trade Jimmy. I don't want to do it, but running it back when the East got way better is front office malpractice. And after seeing most of free agency thus far and what the Heat have done and what other teams have done, I still believe this. If the Heat go into the season with Herro, Rozier, Jimmy, Bam, and Jovic as their starting 5, sure, I'm going to be lined up watching all 82 games because I'm a sicko, but the truth of the matter is they're not going to be able to win a championship with that roster. I think everyone knows that. It's just putting out a competitive team that can make the postseason as a play-in team or as a 6th seed or a 5 seed maybe to try to continue to be competitive and earn the team money, which is fine, but then you're going to let Jimmy Butler potentially walk the next year in free agency. So if it's to me, I'm making a deal for one of Lauri, Trae Young, or Brandon Ingram to try to get Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo help before Jimmy walks for nothing, or I'm trading Jimmy because I don't want to let him walk and the Heat lose absolutely, or like the only thing the Heat gain out of it is having money come off their books. Not in for that. So we're going to talk more about Brandon Ingram here in just a second and how he can help Miami. But let me know, would you trade for BI? Type Y for yes or type N for no. The intriguing thing is when you talk about a Brandon Ingram trade is like, what would the Heat have to give up to get BI? And if I'm just going to be fully transparent with you, I don't really know his price point. Like, he's got 1 year left on his contract for $36.1 million, and you're going to have to extend him, obviously, if you trade for him. Now, the Heat could technically trade for Brandon Ingram, 1 year of Jimmy, Bam, and BI, and then say, hey, do we want to keep this trio together long-term? Maybe. Or you just give BI a long-term deal and let Jimmy walk and build towards the future with Ingram and Bam. It's something you'd have to think about, but it also probably lowers the price point for Ingram because he is in his final year of his contract. We'll talk about what a trade could look like at the end of today's video, but let's continue to talk about how BI could help the Miami Heat. And I always like to look at some advanced shooting for some of these guys to see if they could fit next to Jimmy and Bam, because we know those two for the Heat work mostly from the free throw line in. Well, Brandon Ingram is really good at scoring for a wing in the paint and inside the free throw line, if you will. Within 10 feet, he gets there 4.4 times a game and shoots 63%. That's fine. But obviously, he does the most of his work, and I don't think I would have had to tell you this, in the mid-range game. His pull-up midi, which he shoots the most out of any of his shot profile, at 48.1%. That will play very well. The three-point percentage, and this was all last season's statistics, by the way, is where it gets a little bit intriguing. He doesn't take many threes off the dribble, only 1.3 a game, and he doesn't shoot them that well at 33.8%. But he is a little bit better off the catch, 2.5 times a game on 37% from the field. That is not too bad. And then I wanted to look even more in depth than BI at his career shot chart. And if you remember, light blue, not so good. Dark blue, really good. And as to no surprise of anyone here, look at where Ingram's shots come from. Majority of them come from around the elbows and around the free throw line, which is where we always knew Brandon Ingram likes to get because of his height and his wingspan. He can just back down his guy or dribble one step and rise over the top of his defender. He is an excellent shooter from the elbows. You just see it there. He's way above league average in both of those spots. But the issue that I'm seeing here, when you look at this shot chart, is sure, he is average to above average in almost every portion. There's no super icy light blue there, but the majority of his shots come from the elbow in. And that's the question. Can he space the floor with Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo? Because where do those two like to work the most? The paint and the elbows. Jimmy likes getting to the mid-range. He likes getting to the rim, drawing fouls, and going to the line. We know Bam, as he's working to improve his three-point shot, but as of right now, shoots mostly 15 feet and in, especially in that mid-range game. So how would the spacing work if all three of your guys and your top scorers want to get to the elbow and the free throw line to rise up for a mid-range shot? It's the same concern I had with DeMar DeRozan, which is why Brandon Ingram is one of the least likely guys that I'd want the Heat to go out and get. Like when you mentioned trade targets that could be available this offseason, I'd have Ingram underneath Markkanen, Trae Young, and Kyle Kuzma for that exact reason. Now let's look at his career three-point shooting now, because maybe there is some optimism that in a Heat system and Heat developmental shooting staff, who has been widely known as one of the best, could improve his three-point shot. Over Brandon Ingram's career, he is actually an average to an above average three-point shooter. You see he's about 1% less than league average since he entered the league from the right corner. He's 2% better from the right wing. He's 2% better from the top of the key. Also, the one thing that stood out to me the most is how much he shoots from the left wing in his three-pointers. It's this clearly spot that he likes to take the most shots from and he feels the most comfortable from, even though he's shooting 1% less than league average, and then he's shooting about the same of league average from the left corner. So to me, when you look at these numbers, it's obvious that he is a capable three-point shooter because he's really close to league average in every single statistic, whether it be from the left corner, the right wing, whatever you want to say, he's either 1 or 2% better or worse within league average, which is fine by me. But when then you think about Brandon Ingram as a player, where you're saying, yeah, who cares about his three-point percentage, right? He's just a great ISO guy. Miami needs someone that can create for themselves and draw a defense to kick out for others. Well, is Brandon Ingram an actual overrated ISO scorer? The stats might suggest that is the case. Brandon Ingram in 23-24 had a .96 points per possession in isolation in terms of scoring the basketball. That only came in the 57th percentile. Don't think that is that high when you think of what Brandon Ingram could bring to the table. Obviously, he's done well in the past, but last season, he did not play that well. Coming up in just a second, what would a trade look like for the Miami Heat in terms of getting Brandon Ingram? I'll let you know. But first, I want to make sure you get the best deal out there possible, because look at these sweet Miami Heat hats right here. I love the two-tone color. I love the logo in the front. I love the side MH as well. A little cream color with the red brim. Absolutely on fire. And it's $8 off right now at chatsports.com/heat-hat. That link is in the description and comments of today's video. Take advantage, as it's not going to be on sale for much longer. They also have other hats there, so click on the link and you could see other hats are on sale as well. But personally, this one's my favorite. Get yours today. All right, here is what a Brandon Ingram trade may look like if Miami ends up trying to acquire the forward from NOLA. I think it's going to have to be a three-team deal. I'll explain why in just a second. But the Heat get Brandon Ingram. The Pelicans get 2 first-round picks, one from Utah, which is via Minnesota, one from Miami in 2031, as well as Duncan Robinson. And the Jazz get Tyler Herro. So the Jazz, who have coveted Herro in the past, get a guard to help their roster. They send a first to New Orleans, and then Miami sends Duncan and a first to the Pelicans as well to get Brandon Ingram. The reason why I think it would look like this and be a three-team deal is because it really doesn't make sense for the Pelicans to acquire Tyler Herro. When you just look at their roster construction, their backcourt's full with CJ McCollum and DeJounte Murray. So they obviously are not going to want Tyler Herro, and they're not going to want to pay him that money to come off the bench. It just simply isn't going to work. Now, they could use a floor spacer and shooter off the bench, which is where Duncan Robinson comes into play. But the reason why they likely will not want to get Herro is what I just said, and Herro is going to have to go to a third team. So the Pelicans get a solid role player and 2 firsts for Brandon Ingram. If there's not many people lining up to grab him, I think this could be a viable option for Miami. So let me know before we talk about what I would do and if I'm doing this. Would you do this trade? Type A for accept or type D for decline. I'm hesitant to do that. Sending both Duncan Robinson and Herro to get Brandon Ingram as well as a first-round pick is a risky move. But I probably am going to do it because, like I said, running back this roster, it's front office malpractice. So I don't think this is enough of a gamble to have the risk. Like I think it's worth it, if you will. And I think a Brandon Ingram-Bam duo, even though I don't know if BI is willing or going to be a capable second guy on a championship contending team, I'm taking the risk. And that's kind of why Brandon Ingram's trade value is where it is at, right? Because you have to pay him, and he's going to want a Supermax 4 for 208, but he probably doesn't deserve that, and I don't think he could be someone on a winning team making 50-plus mil. I would pay Brandon Ingram the OG Anunoby deal where he's getting 42, 43 mil a year over 4 seasons or 5 seasons, but I'm not giving him 4 for 208. The reason why I probably would be doing this trade for Brandon Ingram is the other benefits that could come alongside it. You would shed $12.3 million in salary, allowing you to add another free agent, right? You trade Herro and Duncan away. That takes you down to 13 roster spots when you acquire Brandon Ingram. That also gives you a lot of flexibility because when you originally made this deal, right, you were right up against the second apron, if this exact trade happens, of course. If you make this deal, well, you're now about $3-4 million underneath the first apron, which means you can give that to a free agent from the outside or give them the tax-paying mid-level for $5.2 million. You can add another guy, maybe a Sadiq Bey, a Markelle Fultz, like if those guys are still on the board or something like that. So the idea of sending out Herro and Duncan to get Brandon Ingram and cap flexibility, kind of advantageous to me, which is why I'm probably doing the deal. Make sure you are following me over on Twitter at Nic_Rohloff because we're talking Heat basketball over there every single day. So go give me a follow if you want to stay up to date on the latest around the Miami Heat.